in the Chickering's theory. All right, the goal is never, ever, 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 the final goal, independence. Independence is easy, right? What's hard is interdependence. What's hard is interdependence, when we understand that we are connected with everybody and that we have a responsibility to that connection. Okay? All right. Now, Keegan says there's a lot of stress going on because the demands of modern life require see, I'm not capable of rolling it back, Donnie, like you did. I'm trying to get back to level 4, but I can't get there. It doesn't matter. The requirements of modern life require order 4, and yet a lot of people aren't there. They're stuck in 3. They're not self-authoring. Many adults are not there. So this is really an interesting kind of a deal. What we want to do is try to get our students to the place, mostly in this one and in Baxter-Magola's theory as well, where they're just about ready to take the step of self-authoring. You with me? They're not quite there probably, because it's a really kind of a hard place to be in. You have to reflect a lot. All right, Baxter-Magola's theory of self-authorship. First of all, Marcia Baxter-Magola is a delightful person, one of the treasures of the field. She's just about to retire if she hasn't already, but she's amazing. She's done a lot of really good stuff, longitudinal studies, things like that. All right. She talks about, she follows like 90 college students. She interviewed 90 college students for her first set of studies, and then she followed like 70 of them through their 20s and then 40 of them into their 30s. And this is what she's discovering. She's still writing about it. So, phase 1 is following formulas. We follow the plans that are laid out by authorities. Follow the plans that are here's a good example of this one. How many people know students that came in to the university as a pre-med major for a semester or 2 semesters, right? And whose idea was that usually? Usually that was their parents' idea, okay? So that's the formula. Here's the formula. This way you're always going to be able to get a job. This way you're always going to be able to make it. This way you're always going to be, right? And this is an important thing, and if you just do what we're telling you, you're going to be just fine, right? Well, as the father of a person who made it through that system, almost has made it through that system, let me just tell you that that's not enough. That's not enough to get through medical school and the residency and all the stuff that it takes, right? So you're following formulas, you're following plans laid out by authorities, and then these students, they get there and they're taking chemistry and biology, and they're looking and they're going, well, I can pass this, but I don't love it. I don't like it. Why am I here? What am I doing? Right? And so what happens is what? You go into the crossroads. Why? Because following somebody else's formula predictably doesn't work. Okay? So the formulas eventually lead to dissatisfaction. So you move into phase 3, which is what? Well, if the formulas don't work, other people's formulas don't work, the external stuff doesn't work, then what? I got to find another place to direct myself, and I'm going to go inside. And so I can do this even in the face of conflicting ideas. And finally, you get to a place called internal foundation, where you trust your own feelings and you act on them rationally in the context of ability to change as you need to change. Okay? Now, that's a lot. There's a lot going on there, right? Take a second and reflect on what that says. There's a lot in that sentence. So you trust your own feeling. You trust your own feelings. And I act on it rationally. I got my heart and my head going on, okay? Even though sometimes I might have to change my mind a little bit. And sometimes I might even have to change my heart a little bit, okay? And I'm okay with that. Why? Because if I have an internal foundation, then I can remodel the kitchen. Okay? I don't have to rebuild the house. Right? It's solid, and I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to put in a couple of new appliances. Okay? Or I'm going to make stupid analogies that don't work. They can't all be gems. I'm doing the best I can here. I'm working without a net. Come on. Okay? The elements are trusting the internal voice, building an internal foundation, and securing internal... Listen to this. I love some of the language in some of these theories. I love it. Securing internal commitments. That means what? Right? If you think about securing external commitments, that means I got to go sell Donnie on this idea, or we're not going to be able to do it. Right? No, I got to sell me. And sometimes, frankly, I'm not buying. Because I come up with some really harebrained stuff, and sometimes I'm just not buying. Okay? All right. All right. So then we move from there to the social identity theories. The social identity theories. All right? So we're through the self-authoring theories. You know, I'm going to be able to get through most of this stuff. I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised. I thought I had way too much. But do you understand that we're scratching the surface of this, just on the very, very surface? So you need to get this book and take a good look at it. All right. So one of the things that I've been implying all day long, and it's pretty obvious to anybody that's ever studied this stuff, the people who did this work, by and large, are white people. They, by and large, are straight people. They, by and large, took white audiences, white college students. I mean, their respondents were largely white college students. In the beginning, largely male white college students, right? There's sort of a whole stereotype about all of psychology and all of student development, right, is based on samples from sophomore psychology classes. Because why? Because the psychologists have to publish. And so they go out to get respondents, college students. Oh, college students, I've got some right here. So I've got some right here in my class, so I'll just do it this way, right? Well, obviously, there are different things that happen in different cultures and different things that have to do with identity formation, right, than are found in your philosophies, Horatio. So, little Shakespeare reference there. Okay, so we go to Cross and Fagan-Smith's model of black identity development, right? And I'm going to use only, again, these are representatives. There are a lot of other theories, but this is a pretty good one, and it's pretty complicated. And so it's fun to talk about. First of all, there are 3 paths to negrescence. Now, let's just take a moment while we get over the discomfort in hearing that word and hearing somebody say it. All right? The word is a French word, and it means the process of becoming black. Okay? And this is the word that Cross and Fagan-Smith use in their theory. All right? So, pattern A describes the development of a black identity as a result of formative socialization experiences. Formative socialization experiences. So you are black the way you are taught to be black by what? By your family, by your church, by society, by your school, by that sort of thing, okay? And that's, you know, a good solid way to start your identity formation. Pattern B, people are either hiding your identity from you, or you're getting bad messages or mixed messages or things like that. But in any case, it's not working for you, and you're going to need to have some kind of a conversion experience at some point. Okay? And Cross's original theory had to do with that conversion experience, sort of conversion experience. Right? Or pattern C is something called internalized racism. Does anybody know what that is? Have you studied this at all in sociology? Which is what? The society is sending really negative messages, and so what do? I buy those messages. I buy the fact that I am somehow less than, right, for any number of reasons, and that is something that I just, nothing I can do about. All right? So internalized racism. All right? And I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. That was one of the ways that pattern B happens. All right. Now pattern C is negrescence recycling. We'll see that in a minute because both pattern A and pattern B people go through negrescence recycling. All right. Development is described in sectors. Sector 1 is infancy and childhood. It's normal ecology things, the things that happen, your religious environment, your family environment, and so on. Okay. Sector 2, pre-adolescent parental teaching results in one of 3 patterns. This is where I was trying to get to earlier. I got ahead of myself. Either high race salient, low race salient, or internalized racism. Okay? How many people ever watched the Cosby Show, the most recent Cosby Show, where it's a doctor and a lawyer and they have 2 children, 3 children, whatever. Okay, everybody saw that. What would you say in that household? Would that be a high race salience household? The children as they're growing up. They're aware of their blackness, aren't they? They have jazz players come through their home. They have other black professionals that are there. Their grandparents are lionized, right? They know who they are and they know what they're about and they're proud of their race. Okay? So those students, those kids, are going to be in a high race salience position. They understand that their culture is an important thing and it's a positive thing. Now, a low race salience household would be one in which we're not going to worry about being black. We're not going to talk about that. We're just people. We're going to be colorblind. We're going to be whatever, right? Or an internalized racism environment is we're growing up and we're in a negative way. We're in a bad place because we're black or because the society is down on us and we're angry about that and blah, blah, blah. All right? So those are some of the things that happen in Sector 2. Sector 3, adolescence, and this is mostly what we see in coming into college, but just before and coming into college. We go, remember the words that come back? Remember moratorium. We're in moratorium, we're seeking something. That could be foreclosure. It could be foreclosure in which we're just never going to make any progress, right? I'm internalized racism, but I'm a foreclosure, and so I'm just going to buy in the whole time, okay? But in adolescence, in moratorium, then what? I'm looking for a way to be. High race salient kids don't have to do that. They already kind of know a way to be. But low race salient and internalized racism people do, if they're going to make any progress, they get to this level where they're looking for another way to be. Okay? And that's why I say the outcome is related to the 3 cases above. Okay, Sector 4. The high salience kids achieve a reference group orientation. Okay? They now know what to do. They know how to be black. They associate with black people and everything's cool. The low race salience students, they need a conversion experience, and we'll see how conversion works in a minute, right? And the low race salience people and the internalized racism people may not reach negrescence. They may not reach a healthy black person concept, okay? Sector 5 is adult negrescence. This is the original Cross model was this model. And he added the rest of it when he did some later thinking, all right, with Fagan Smith, right? This is the familiar model with the stages of pre-encounter. Pre-encounter is just exactly what it sounds like. I don't really even know there are any other people except for, I don't know that I'm black. I don't know that I'm, anything like that, all right? Encounter. I have an encounter, often an unpleasant encounter, but not necessarily an unpleasant encounter, but just an encounter with people who are not like me, and I understand that I need to figure out some categories in my mind to put some of this data in, okay? Immersion. So what happens is what? I saw this with a young Latino girl. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't an African American in this case, but she was raised in a suburban Dallas environment. She went to predominantly white high school. She was reasonably high socioeconomic. Her name was Lopez, but nobody, it just didn't matter. Her name might as well have been Smith or Jones or whatever. And she got into college, and what happened? She discovered in a sociology class that maybe it would be cool to understand what it means to be Latina, right, or Hispanic. And oh my goodness. So what'd she do? She went completely bananas for that, right? She immersed herself in the culture. She wanted to learn all the things she hadn't learned before. She began to think that the only way to be was Hispanic. The only way to be was Latina. The only way to, right? Until what? Until at some point, you kind of wake up and you say, okay, but there's some good things about what I was, where I was before, and there's some good things about other people besides black people or brown people, and so I need to emerge. So immersion, okay? That's the stage that we're talking about, okay? And then internalization and internalization commitment, which is what? Again, where we've been going the whole time. The concepts recycle, right? We got to go from a simpler to a more complex place. We got to go from an externally imposed order to an internally imposed, okay? I caught sight of the camera. Am I walking around too much? Okay. Okay. And from an external locus of control to an internalized locus of control. That's exactly what we're talking about here, right? So I was worried at first about how society views blacks, right? But now in internal and internalized commitment, then what? I know who I am. I know what I'm trying to do. I know what my identity is. Okay? Right. So I could be, now I have several choices. I could be black nationalist, which means what? It means something back in the 60s when we were growing up, but it doesn't mean quite that. It means something, I'm just hanging out with black people. This is what I want. I believe I'm going to be involved with just black people. I can be bicultural. I can be, in shorthand terms, very shorthand terms, I can be black at home and whatever I need to be at work and in the world, okay? Or I can be multicultural, and that's a place that we like in student affairs, of course, but that, our values are very clear about that, where we want to celebrate everybody culture, and we can take and borrow from everyone's culture, okay? And the way that starts is to be secure in your own. Okay? And finally, sector 6 is negrescence recycling. This happens when the way I understand my identity is challenged in some fashion, is challenged in some way. Okay? So then I kind of got to go back through the stages. Now I go quick through them, right? Because I don't have to revisit every piece of thing that I ever learned, right? But I do need to kind of understand, and maybe I need to understand sometimes at a deeper level. All right. Now there are, and if I had, and I am going to run out of time a little bit, but if I had some more time, I would go through a white identity model for you, because the difference in a white identity model and a white racial consciousness model is what? That I have to come to understand the notion of privilege. Whether I like it or not, the fact is that it exists, right? I am 6'3", and I have a deep voice. That has worked for me every day of my life since I was 18 years old, right? And I know that. I know that. In fact, I know it so intensely that I have to be aware of it sometimes, right? Because I don't want to intimidate someone, so I'm going to stay out of their space. I'm going to make sure I'm not lurking out, right? Now, is it fair that gives me privilege? No, but it's true. Do I take advantage of it? Did I do it on purpose? No, but nonetheless it exists. The same thing is true about white skin, right? About white culture, Anglo culture. It's there, right? And we need to do something. You have to address that, or you're not going to have a good enough notion of your own identity to be able to participate in a multicultural identity. You with me? Okay, so that's what would happen in the white models. The Latino models for the social identity theory, for the racial identity theory, are roughly the same. There's some differences, but and for Asians, for Native Americans, and so on. All right, but another way to look at it is not racial identity, because racial identity development with even Asians and with Hispanics and even black is a hard place to live. There's no such thing as a pure genotype or anything like that. It's not race per se. It's social constructions of race, right? And another way to think about that is ethnicity. Okay, so now we can talk about ethnicity, ethnic development. For example, the Torres model, Vasti Torres, one of my favorite people in the whole world, and she talks about quadrants using the two terms acculturation and ethnic identity. So if you have a high acculturation, in other words, you're able to function very well in the dominant culture of for example, the United States, and you have a high ethnic identity, right? Then you're in this quadrant, and you are a very high functioning bicultural person. Okay? If you have low acculturation and high ethnic identity, then what? Then you have chosen Hispanic identity. Okay, you're choosing a Hispanic identity, and you're less able to access the dominant culture. Okay? If you have high acculturation but low ethnic identity, then what? You've chosen a white identity, and you're able to do something more in the dominant culture, but you have given away part of your own heritage, right? In our student affairs values, it's a choice that you make. Okay, if you're low acculturation and low ethnic identity, what? You're a diffusion. You've got nothing, right? You got nothing going on. Okay. Okay, so the influences on your Hispanic identity development then are the environment where you grew up, right? What did your family tell you? Were you in a Hispanic community? Were you in a Hispanic church? Were you in a place where you could develop a lot of ethnic identity, right? Your family influence and your generational status. Now this is what a second or third generation Latina like Vasti Torres was able to bring to the party, and lots of other people have talked about this, right? We want to talk about Hispanic students, but Hispanic students are very different depending on whether they immigrated from Mexico 3 years ago, or their first generation, or their second generation, or their third generation, or down here in South Texas, 8th generation living in Texas, right? Those are very, very different things. They're very different people. We want to talk about Hispanic students, but Puerto Ricans are not the same thing as Honduras, right? And Puerto Ricans that live, and I've had this education from some of my friends, Puerto Ricans that live in New York are not the same thing as the ones that live in Chicago, and they're not the same thing as the ones that live on the island, right? And first generation Puerto Ricans that live in New York are not the same as second generation Puerto Ricans that live in New York, maybe around the block. They're completely different people, completely different kind of culture, and so Vasti's capturing that variable in ways that I had never even thought of. Okay, self-perception and status in society, your own self-perception, that influences your identity development, obviously. Processes of change are cultural dissonance and changes in your relationships. So the student is on the campus, and what happens? I thought that being Hispanic was this way, but it turns out there's a lot of people that are this way instead. What's up with that? And I got to do something with that. Okay? Or I have had nothing but relationships to Hispanic kids in my high school, so now suddenly I've got relationships with lots of different kinds of people, or different kinds of relationships with Hispanic kids, and those things make me move on. And Vasti Torres later worked with Marcia to add a self-authoring component to the model and put a little bit different development scaffold on it. All right, there's other ethnic identity models for blacks, for Caribbean students, for Asians, for Native Americans, and even one for a womanist type of perspective. Now, look, we can't do all the theories, or even all the families of theories. For example, we didn't do multiracial identity development, we didn't do spiritual development, we didn't do any of the typology theories like learning theories and Myers-Briggs and stuff like that. We didn't do gender identity theories, right? There's a whole thing about your gender identity is on a continuum from masculine to feminine, and there's all sorts of places in the middle, and there's all sorts of pronouns that we're supposed to use that we're not using. One called HIR here, right? That is very, very interesting work, and I love there's cisgender, and then there's of course there's a transgender and various flavors of that, and so but we just don't have enough time. So. But two more are critical, and there's both sexual identity theories. All right, we're going to do them in 2 minutes. All right, first is Cass's model of sexual orientation, identity formation. I think these are particularly critical, the theories of gay and lesbian students, because this is the invisible minority, as we all know. And so we have to try to be more aware of this. All right, so pre-stage 1, first of all, you consider yourself as heterosexual, and you know that that's a privileged status. Stage 1 is identity confusion. This is when you're first aware that something's not right. Stage 2 is identity comparison. It's the beginnings of acceptance. Maybe I am gay or lesbian, bisexual, and I need to know what that would mean, okay? I'm not ready to commit to it yet, but I need to know, all right? Then identity tolerance. Okay, I understand that I really am. And, well, shoot, now I did go back too far. Now, is that, whoops. All right. Well, I guess I've,
That's it.
What, is that what's next?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I messed up. Because there's another slide in there somewhere. I lost it. There are some more things to Cass's theory. But it goes on from there to developing to gay activism, to activism in a gay student organization, or usually a gay student, but a gay and lesbian organization, membership in the community, and developing your intimacy status, okay? And so that's not bad. Out of 60 slides, I messed one up, so. All right, so then there's Diogeli's model of lesbian, gay, and bisexual development. And it's much more personal and much more sort of constructivist. It depends on personal subjectivities, actions, interactive intimacies, obviously socio-historical connection. If you're in the middle of central Texas in a very small town, this is going to impact your development, right? Based on the mores and the laws and the customs and so on. Interactive processes are exiting heterosexual identity. I'm beginning to leave that identity and take on another one. Developing a personal LGB status, identity status, developing a lesbian, gay, bisexual social identity and a support network, developing an intimacy status. This is difficult because of the invisibility of role models. I'm not saying becoming sexually active. I mean, how do I act as a gay couple or as a lesbian couple? How do I act in a relationship like that? I don't know, and it's not easy to find out because I've got all kinds of examples of heterosexual couples to look at, but almost none of healthy gay couples or healthy lesbian couples, right? That's a very hard thing for us. This is one of the reasons why we have to have these kinds of organizations on campus. All right, so, and then entering an LGBT community, some people just never do. They don't have the need to, or the cost is too high for them personally or professionally. All right. There are new theories every year, new research. It's a different world than it was 40 plus years ago. It's easier now because there are lots of theories. There's lots of tools to use, but it's harder because you got to keep up with the tools. Okay? There are commonalities in the theories, as we've pointed out all along, and in our practice. Very quickly, here are some of the commonalities. Every developmental theory, right, should describe behaviors that are simpler, that move from simpler to more complex as the students learn how to navigate the world differently.